Inspired is a great presentation by Aish HaTorah together with Rabbi Yaakov Salomon, showing that how much each of us can do for Kol Yisrael. There are so many Nisrochim in Kol Yisrael, so many people that just with a little bit of Kiruv, inviting someone for a Shabbos. Can we imagine what we do for a person or for a family? We invite them over for Shabbos. They don't know what it's all about. And with this presentation, we will learn how much a kleinigkeit, very minute, small matter, can be mekara people HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Actually, Chazal tell us that the neshama is like a gacheles amuma. Just have to blow on a gacheles amuma. Just so it's a flame, just to bring out the flame. It's a coal that's a little covered with ashes. Just blow at it, and the entire spectrum of light comes out. We can bring out these neshamas. I can tell you so many stories that would be just with kleinigkeiten, with minute matters. Your mekara people get inspired. People have such a koyach. The koyach, a person by nature is a mislamed. He wants to learn, and he wants to hear, especially Yiddish and Neshama, which is really thriving and thirsty for Aliyah, for Torah, for Kedusha, because the Sheresh is Kodesh. And by us bringing out that Kedusha, we do so much. We can bring Deire Deires Loasid. We should be Zeiche, in the schus of Kiruv, we should be Zeiche Tigula Shlema B'Korov Amen.
Kiruv Rechoikim is something important?
Sure.
Yeah. Do you do some Kiruv?
That's another question.
I was going to ask you if you think Kiruv Rechoikim is important.
Yes.
Yes? Do you do some Kiruv Rechoikim?
No.
Some people are afraid to do Kiruv.
Some people don't want to be bothered.
Why wouldn't they want to be bothered?
You got to ask them.
I'm busy doing other things.
Kiruv Rechoikim is something important? Kiruv Rechoikim.
No.
Is it something important?
Yes.
Do you do some Kiruv Rechoikim?
My son does it for me. I don't think it's a good influence on his children, but he doesn't listen.
Do you know any people who are not from?
No.
If you met somebody, would you want him to become from?
Yes.
What would you do?
I don't know.
Why don't people do more Kiruv, you think?
Unfortunately, people don't feel that close to each other. They think that a Russian is a Russian, he's not a Jew, and they think a Yemenite is a Yemenite, not a Jew.
They probably don't realize the importance of it, because all of Yiddishkeit involves Kiruv. Matter of fact, even people that are from Kiruv even become closer themselves. There's always room for Kiruv.
Why don't people do more Kiruv? Maybe because they're not trying to, I guess. I have no idea. Honestly, no idea.
It's such a wonderful thing. Kol Yisrael Rivim Zelazeh. It's a very important thing to be Mekav everyone to Yiddishkeit.
Right. Do you do Kiruv Rechoikim yourself?
No.
If someone who was more religious was going to approach you and invite you to their home for Shabbat or give you a Jewish book or something like that, how would you react to that?
I would go with that. I'd like that.
Have you ever thought about becoming more religious? Or
at times. I've read some books. I'm considering, exploring a little more my Judaism.
What does being Jewish mean to you?
I actually didn't find out I was Jewish until last year after my grandma had passed away. My grandma was a survivor of the Holocaust. And ever since, I've had a whole new perspective, and I've been trying to learn the culture, but it's tough, especially with grandma being gone.
How religious are you, would you consider yourself?
Spiritual, but not, I don't attend synagogue.
How come?
I'm married to a Christian, and laziness.
How would they have to approach you? What would be the right way?
Probably through my family, I guess. I have a daughter who's 5, a son, as I said, who's 11. To what it would bring to them potentially might be a way.
It's certainly true. The older I get, the more interested I am, and the more parts I'd like to learn about, and the more parts I feel I've missed over the years.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is your Jewishness?
It's somewhere between 9. I'm really proud of my Jewishness. I'm not trying to hide it. I'm not trying to embrace it, but between 9 to 8.
Would you be open to someone teaching you more about your Jewish heritage?
If the offer was there, yeah. I mean, if it was, someone who looked friendly, and definitely if it was someone I knew, I know a lot of people who do that, and if they asked, yeah, sure.
The person who's atoning or coming back has tasted and returned. So I think there's something very, there's a lot of texture, there's a lot of color, there's a lot of thought, a lot of courage in a Baal Tshuva. I mean, it's an affirmative choice. It's saying, I'm choosing to change. That to me is huge.
I was actually dating a Cuban woman. She was not Jewish. At a certain point, I realized if I were to marry this woman, my children wouldn't be Jewish.
Imagine a person living their whole life and not connected to the Rebbeinu Shalom. I mean, that is a tragedy. That was me. That was absolutely me. And the Almighty sent the Shliach, and He got me, right? And we all have the opportunity to be Shlichim. We all have the opportunity to be messengers, of the Almighty. And Chazal tell us, Shliach Shalom Kamoso. If we're a Shliach of the Almighty, we're representing the Almighty. We're going to get Siyata D'Shmaya. We're going to get tremendous help from above. And I see it. I see it every day.
It's so easy to write people off based on how they dress, how they act, and what they do. And I was not a good candidate to become observant. I wasn't going through a crisis. I was doing very well, successful in terms of secular society, enjoying my life. So it wasn't like I was looking for something, nothing was missing. You would look at me and say, there's nothing here, there's no hook to get this guy. And if I could be gotten, anyone can.
I'd be surfing in a jungle in Indonesia with a couple guys, and one of them's a born-again Christian who's like, he's got a Jew to work on while we're in the jungle together. But they always boiled down to like faith. Everything was like, all you got to do is believe, and I wasn't interested in that.
People go elsewhere to other religions because they're not being filled, and because there is no real true exposure to the beauty of Judaism and to the relevance of Judaism.
When I was in college, you would go through course after course, and to get a piece of chachma, something that actually will light up your insides, I maybe had 2 professors in 4 years. And those 2 professors maybe said 1 or 2 things somewhere along the line on a whole semester that moved me. When I got to yeshiva, I was overdosing every single day. You learn a Chazal, you learn a Medrash, you learn a Reb Dessler, you learn, and it was just like, whoa, hold on, I can't process all this.
From people oftentimes say, I don't know enough, I can't work with somebody or answer their questions. So the answer to that is, most non-Frum people are non-Frum, not because they're anti-Torah, they just don't know any Torah.
I don't really know how to do kiruv, but I know that if Frum people have a smile, if they're happy, if they treat their spouses with respect, if they don't scream at their kids, if they give tzedakah, if when they pray it's sincere and you can tell when someone's praying sincerely, if they make their brachas out loud and it looks like they're talking to God, that has tremendous impact on secular Jews. They sense the sincerity.
The time is mukhshel lakach for sure. First of all, we haven't had in at least 2,000 years, not once, a Baal Tshuva movement like we have today. Banim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem. We are Kodesh Baruch Hu's children. Imagine the pain to Kodesh Baruch Hu when he sees his children lost. What more could you do for Kodesh Baruch Hu than bring back his children to him?
I was born in this country 70 years ago, and in the army I was in a theatrical group. And then I became a producer and director. I made films, television, everything. And then I was 40 years old. I met a man, Rav Zilberman, Zichrono Livracha, and it was a planned meeting. I didn't know I'm going to fall into a trap, Baruch Hashem. And I fell into the trap, and he said to me the sentence that changed my life. Because we argued. I was in a leftist youth organization called the Shomer HaTzair, and he said to me, I can prove to you that the Torah was given by the Creator in Mount Sinai almost 4,000 years ago. I said, what? Did you say the word fact and proof? I said, yes. I said, prove it to me. And then after 3, 4, 5 meetings, I realized this is it. And I went out from his house and said to myself, well, what am I doing with this? I couldn't even I put the yarmulke on my head, and I looked in the mirror, and it became shvaz before my eyes, because I never realized that I will never go with a yarmulke on my head. Because I was very famous in this country, and I had an image, and this was the image, and I was living my image, you know. And I sat in my home. We had a big house in Jaffa. תסתכל, פה כל הים התיכון. מה אתה אומר? מדהים, אני לא מאמין. ועכשיו תסתכל, מפה עד שם, כל האורך, מסיבות, חבר'ה, על האש, ועל מה שאתה לא רוצה. And then I light Shabbos candles once a week with a broche. Once a week. That's all. Because God gave me it was such an opening. Unbelievable. And I began with this only mitzvah. It was a very difficult mitzvah to accept, because it's the first time in my life that I understood that I have to do something which doesn't come from myself, that I do it because I'm obligated by a power which is exterior to me, which demands me, which commands me to do it. I didn't even think that I'm going to leave my life, that I was keeping my things, I was doing films, everything, and I kept the mitzvahs, the shows, everything. Almost nobody knew about it, because I was keeping it as a minimum thing. When I found out what Torah is, and I began to learn Torah, this really changed my life. Because the whole thing that was the center of my life, films, I'm a creator, I'm doing films, became so small, so unimportant. Then we went to Jerusalem. We said only as experience, you know, just to see a few months what it is to daven in a minyan, to be in a place where you can learn Torah together. So we went as a vacation for a few months. And this vacation lasts now for 27 years. This is our heritage, this is our tradition, this is our wisdom. This is the thing that held Am Yisrael together all the history. Let's look into it a few minutes every week. 15 minutes a week. Let's go come when Tuesday, Wednesday, when it's convenient for you. We learn 20 minutes, 15 minutes, that's all. And this makes the miracle. The soul connects itself with the sanctity of the Torah, with the wisdom of the Torah. And this is it's a birth. It's a birth. A man becomes a newborn.
כולם משקרים אבותיכם. וזו חוצפה. ואת הדבר הזה אני אומר בבית דין של מטה, בבית דין של מעלה. הגאונים, הרמב"ם. זה לא היה אמת גמורה, לא הייתי אומר את זה כאן.
Don't be afraid. You are bringing these homes of these people the greatest treasure in the world. You bring them light into their life. Don't be ashamed. Come and say, we don't want money. We didn't come for any organization. We don't want to do anything. We came to learn Torah together with you 15 minutes. Be secular. Don't put nothing at all. Let's learn Torah together 15 minutes. In Israel, we even say it even better. We come in and say, let's learn 15 minutes for the safety of the soldiers of our army. Let's learn 15 minutes for Am Yisrael. I said, okay, 15 minutes, why not? And they begin, and this is it. And they come again next week, and second, third week, and then things change. I try and learn as much as I can. But the Torah obliges me to go out and do the kiruv thing. So I have to do it, I'm doing it. All the Gdolim, it's from Rav Elyoshiv and Rav Shach, L'Avdim Chaim Chaim, and Rav Steinman, and the Sfaradim, Rav Ovadia, and Rav Mashaud Zecher Tzaddik. Everybody, Chassidim, Litvish, everybody, saying that this is what we have to do. These leaders are shouting to us every day. They do this, every Ben Torah, everyone has to do this thing. Can you give them a better thing than that? You bring them happiness, you bring a connection with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. You bring sanctity into the houses, peace, love, beauty, wholeness. To be a Jew, what's greater than that? You bring them back to the Father. Bashamayim, what can be greater than that? This is our schus. We have to exploit it now.
I think it's something that's important that should be, every person should feel an achrayus and a responsibility as a part of the Jewish nation to go out and do.
Why is that? Why is it so important?
It's something, if you would see, let's say, your brother, God forbid, falling off a cliff, of course you'd go around and save him. So if you see your brother spiritually falling down a cliff, you gotta go out and you gotta go out there and save him.
Why don't more people do kiruv v'chaikim, more from people?
I guess it's something they're never exposed to.
This is Demei Achicha, Tzakim Elai Min Ha'adama. This is the blood of our brethren. We have to think to ourselves, these are people, if we have any way to reach them, any way to communicate with them, or serve as an example for them, when you are waiting online at the bank, when you're driving your car, when you're doing business on the phone, you wear a yarmulke or a shaitel, people are looking at you. And if you cut ahead in line, or you respond in an impolite way, there's a non-religious Jew standing there watching you, the opportunity to be mashpi on him l'tov, without taking any kiruv seminars, and without learning about evolution, just by the way you behave on the street, and the way you behave in interactions, can make a tremendous difference.
I think people are smart enough to realize that the secular solutions to the human dilemma aren't working. And although in the short term they very hopefully buy into the 7 habits of successful people or these other secular systems, but over a few months or a few years they realize that that's not going to be the solution. So they're looking for something that really will be the solution, and Torah really works. So when they hear it, it sounds like it would work, and when they try it, they see it does work, and they keep coming back for more.
As of maybe 7 years ago or so, I started becoming more observant. Before that, I was completely secular. I was apathetic, which is even worse, because at least when you don't like something, you come to the table with some emotion, you care a little bit about it. I didn't care about the fact that I didn't care, which really puts you out of the money. Someone could have come along 5 years, 10 years earlier, and it may have become religious earlier. But the truth is, there's something for everyone in Judaism. Well, you can't connect with anyone unless you approach them. And people talk about you have to be an expert, you should know how to do kiruv. anyone that does it is an expert. The expert is simply someone that does it. You're not going to get everyone all the time. There are people that come in the doors, that go out the doors. At the end of the day, you have to try. Because if someone didn't try with me, I wouldn't be sitting here.
By them just showing their love, showing that they're real, bringing people in and showing them their life, they'll just show that they're the light to the nations, just through example. Because I grew up next to two of the largest Jewish neighborhoods in the world, Borough Park and Flatbush, and not once did anybody reach out. It was like there's two different worlds. There's still this barrier. We have to break that barrier by just showing that they're our brothers and sisters.
Well, my running joke was that Judaism has its ups and downs, meaning that all it mattered to me was, okay, now it's time to stand up, now it's time to sit down, so I would say Judaism has its ups and downs. But as far as I was concerned, it was really, Judaism was a corpse. Well, I grew up in Manhattan on the Upper West Side. I went to public school, and then I went to an Episcopalian school. And I graduated and went to Bates College in Maine, and my interest was outdoors, hiking, backpacking, canoeing, sleeping under the stars. And that was pretty much my life. I came back to New York to get a job. I worked in social work and with homeless people. I felt that my own tradition, Judaism, was really irrelevant. I thought it was fraught with contradictions. It didn't make sense to me that any spiritual path would only be 2 days a year, going to temple or synagogue, and that just didn't seem to make any sense to me. I was really looking for a direct connection with God. I was looking for spirituality, a spiritual life, a path to follow. The reason why I thought it was a corpse was that it seemed that the whole goal of the religion was self-preservation of the religion, not because there was any inherent meaning. And so just to be part of something that's just there to perpetuate itself without giving of any of the spirit of it seemed to be a waste of time. I didn't know what Kiddush or Bris was. It was very, very secular background. We did have a Seder, but really the idea was, you know, how quick can we get this over with? Not, why don't we really delve into the Haggadah? I remember one incident where I was back from school, from college, and I went back to my old synagogue, and it happened to have been Rosh Hashanah, although I didn't even know that it was. And I remember I went there, and they asked me if I had a ticket. I said, a ticket for what? You know, it's not like this is a ball game or anything. And they said, no, you need a ticket for a seat. And I said, this is what this religion's come to? You need a ticket just to come to temple? I didn't even realize that it was a holiday that actually it's a tradition to buy tickets for holiday services, but I was so turned off by that and so angry about that. You know, and then they were questioning me, did you really belong to the shul? And I said, well, it's bar mitzvah here, you know, and they said, okay, you know, maybe we'll check the records. And I said, forget about it. And I just walked away, and I was very much turned off. People go elsewhere to other religions because they're not being filled and because there is no real true exposure to the beauty of Judaism and to the relevance of Judaism. I remember growing up on the West Side, there were people every Saturday that I saw on West End Avenue. I only lived on Riverside Drive, which is 1 block away, going up and down the avenue, and it was like we lived in different worlds completely. As far as I was concerned, they were the Amish. During my collegiate career, I went to India and Thailand and on a Buddhist studies program, intensive meditation and Buddhist philosophy, and ended up spending a month also in Thailand as a novice monk with the saffron robes and a shaved head and a begging bowl, the whole thing. I was in the middle of a 9-day silent retreat. I don't know if you can imagine being silent for 9 days. It was quite intense, and it seemed to me that since I so much believed in this idea of karma, that everything happens for a reason, then there must be some reason that I wasn't born in an Asian body, I wasn't born in an Asian country. And so for myself, I had to reconcile why I was born in an American body with a Jewish neshama, I guess, although I didn't have that terminology yet. And so I came back to the United States to finish my bachelor's degree, and my undergraduate thesis was comparing Zen Buddhism and Hasidic Judaism. It wasn't until I went to graduate school to Yeshiva University that I started to meet people who were religious and that I could relate to. And I was invited to Shabbos dinners, and that's really where that started to take off. I'd met my wife prior to becoming religious. We became religious together.
What was that like?
That was very intense. Fortunately, I'm very thankful to God that we were on the same page the whole time. We were able to process it together. I remember we made so many mistakes. The first Shabbos meal that we went to, Sharon had given flowers, and we were so struck because they just seemed like they didn't know what to do with the flowers. We were like, what's the big deal? Put them, rip off the paper, put them in a vase, what's the big deal? Of course, later we realized that, there were certain issues. I remember we turned off the lights. We felt badly afterwards, for the rest of Shabbos, then they had to go to the bathroom in the dark, but they were very tolerant and forgiving of us. And that was what really brought us in, was the way in which they seemed sincerely interested in us as people. And it wasn't like we were their project, it was just that they wanted to get to know us as people. I'm part of an ongoing story which started thousands of years ago and which will end up with Mashiach and beyond. And so the big picture, and one of the things that's been very important to me, has been an identification with the Jewish people and the Jewish story. There's more and more from people in the workplace, as lawyers, as doctors. I just think that there's such a tremendous opportunity to be role models in secular settings. I can't tell you how many times people have come up to me. I used to work part-time in nursing homes, and West Indian people would come up to me and ask me for a bracha. They said, well, you're one of the chosen people. So I think it is incumbent upon us not just to be role models and the light unto the other nations, but also the light unto our own nation, and not to be afraid to take on that role, to take on that responsibility. The best foray into Judaism is to go to a Jewish wedding, because it's such a happy event and everybody's having a good time. And I think my association with Judaism was always like such a burden. It was like, oy vey, like we have to sit in shul for hours and hours to listen to dribble that we didn't even understand. And for something that's happy and for something that people can identify with, that would be my advice to people. And not to be afraid to reach out and say good Shabbos to people, even if you know that they're not religious, because it does have an impact. It makes me feel very sad that there are a lot of people who grew up the way that I did, particularly in New York. But when you're ignorant, you don't know that you're ignorant. You think that you know something. So realizing that I really didn't understand the religion and that there really is something to it that is relevant and alive and exciting and fun, I can't imagine my life without it. And I feel, even to the core of my being, it's how I identify myself. I was embarrassed growing up to identify myself as Jewish. It was something to be ashamed of. Now I feel that it's something to be proud of. Now I would identify myself, I do identify myself as a Jewish American. Before, it was just, I'm an American, I'm a New Yorker, and Jewish was like something that you said, under your breath in an ashamed way. I'm thrilled to be Jewish, and I'm thrilled to be connected to Torah, and the people and role models that I've met along the way and continue to learn from now is just astounding for me.
About 15 years ago, a synagogue in Philadelphia, a conservative synagogue in Philadelphia, invited a Buddhist guru to their Friday night service to give it some spirituality. Why did they have to invite a Buddhist? because for them it was clear. Judaism has no spirituality. It has customs and laws and maybe some clever philosophy and some old, worn-out tunes, but no spirituality. So you have to go to Buddhism to find spirituality. Same in Israel, by the way. So many Israelis go to India. They haven't a clue that their own tradition has a spiritual base.
In my mid-teens, late teens, I began becoming very interested in spirituality, psychology, and I began investigating various religions, and Judaism was one of them. You grow up in the secular world, everything's part of this religion, there's that religion, it's all good. You like chocolate ice cream, you like vanilla ice cream, it's, you know, it doesn't make any difference, everything is part of it, it's all the same. The neshama is expressing itself, and there's an internal need that draws them in this direction.
I looked for a teaching job in the West Bank in Ramallah, Jordan. I looked for something in Iran. I was teaching in a Quaker school at that point on the side, and I wanted something exotic. The hashgacha being what it was, I wound up with a teaching job in Israel, which I never got to. I'm one of the Mayor Schuster guys who met, I don't know if you know the name Mayor Schuster, but someone who stands at the Western Wall, invites people, unsuspecting youth, into yeshivas. The truth is I was looking for him, though. One of the rare birds that was actually trying to find him, because I had read a brochure when I was on the kibbutz that I'd spent 2 months on, that there was this very charismatic rabbi in Jerusalem, a young man who had been a Marxist, who had walked into the rabbi and within the course of an hour had given up Marxism and decided to study Torah the rest of his life. And I was very anxious to meet the rabbi because I figured in an hour I could turn him around. Plus, I heard there was free room and board in yeshiva, which was significant to me. So when I saw Mayor Schuster, I accepted his invitation very readily. After an hour spent with the rabbi, I realized it was going to take much more time than an hour to turn him around.
Were you always a very outgoing guy?
No.
So tell me, how did you overcome it?
I was a shy person. But, you know, sometimes you have to do something, you do it, that's all. Kiruv is the most important thing in the world today, because we're losing so many. It's the most important thing. So that it's imperative that you do kiruv, to reach out, to try to help somebody.
My parents are both born here and very American. They have this wonderful sense of gratitude toward America, and they believe in the melting pot, and they believe in the promise of America for everyone. I came from a traditional home. My father had a wonderful sense of tradition, and he was a wonderful man. Tremendous values, but he was not observant, and he came from the time where people worked on Sabbath. They tried to keep a semblance of being kosher, but they weren't anywhere near what we would call observant today. Although my father always had, and my mother, this core sense of gratitude, tremendous sense of appreciation for life's blessings and God's blessings. So I grew up in a kind of free environment with clearly there was no sense of Torah as being a guiding force. I had been going to non-observant camps, Jewish, but completely secular. And I saw the culture. And even though I was not observant, I said, this can't be right. This cannot be the way it should be. So now I go to seminar and I see there's another alternative, and there's another set of values that's being offered. And then here, those same values had Shabbos as a part of them, and kosher, and prayer. But I had a resistance that I'll call the cool factor. You're a 16-year-old kid. How are you going to be religious and cool? And, you know, again, you know, God runs the world. He sent the antidote to the cool factor, which was he sent a guy named Ricky Cohn to this seminar. Ricky Cohn was a senior in my high school when I was a freshman, and he was the coolest guy around. Smart, articulate, and he had gone to Israel for a year, and now had come back and was very observant, and he was my advisor. And here was this guy who was, you know, cooler than cool, talking about the value of Torah and a religious life. And as one of my teachers said to me when he came up to visit that weekend, he goes, yeah, you know, Ricky wears nicer sweaters than you do, you know. And I said, hey, if he can be religious and cool, it's a possibility. You can do it. And so, at 16, I came home from a Thanksgiving Shabbaton, and I told my mother that I wouldn't have our ice cream birthday cake that Sunday night because I had a meat dinner. And she really got upset, and that was the beginning of me keeping Shabbos and being kosher, and the beginning of a journey. To quote Rabbi Shimon Green, who quotes his rabbi, Rabbi Goldstein, he says, you want somebody to have a religious experience? Have a religious experience in front of them. Just be genuine in yourself, in your life, and that'll be heard, and it'll be seen, and it'll be felt. But you have to invite the people so they can see it and watch it and hear it. Just be committed to being close to others and letting others into your life. I was a bit familiar with the concept of resistance when it came to getting married. To me, it seemed like Mount Everest. And I can say this clearly. It would have taken many more years for me to get married had I not connected to Torah. Without Torah, I think my life would have had less meaning, less joy, less purpose, and critically less direction. I probably would have missed out on some critical relationships in my life, even with my father, because becoming more observant brought me closer to my father. And in many ways, ironically, I would have been much less me.
Well, I attend services on the High Holy Days. I observe, I keep kosher for Passover all through the 8 days. I help my family build a sukkah. I'm fairly observant among the overall scheme of things. In the overall population, I guess you would say that. So
you don't put on tefillin or keep Shabbos or anything, but...
I used to.
Oh, you used to? Why did you stop doing it?
I don't know. It kind of left me, but I'm pretty sure that by the time I get married, I'll be returning to it. So,
why do you feel that way?
I'm going to want my kids to grow up in a house that's, you know, surrounded with Judaism.
If I could say I missed one thing that I would like to reinsert in my life, it was the fact that we never started Shabbat dinners, which I think created a big void in my life. So if I was going to follow, you know, if I was going to insert one thing, which unfortunately I'm, you know, behind the curve now, that would have been something that I would have loved to have instituted, and then other things might have grown from that. It's a part of, I guess, you know, what we're about. You know, and my lack of knowledge doesn't close me off to that.
It's about bringing people closer. You know, some of those people are going to come fully observant, some of those people are going to go from working on Rosh Hashanah to going to shul. Some of those people are going to go from partying on Friday night to maybe having a Shabbos meal and then going home watching television. There's different levels of observance. And some people who become fully frum over many, many years. Some people, they hit it right away, and some people, it's a long process. And people wind up at different levels. People need to be guided. People need to be spoken to. Don't be afraid to reach out to people, because there's always a hesitancy to like, well, I don't know. So even if you're busy, even if you have a lot of things in your mind, I mean, this should just be there somewhere. You don't have to think about, like, how do I make someone who's totally secular, totally observant,
That's not really, the question is, how can I bring people closer to their Judaism? How can I have people connect to their Judaism? And it's better for you also. Helps you connect in some better way.
I used to see the Jews walking, and I used to think, my gosh, get at least a bicycle. I mean, it's so hot and they're schwitzing, and I'm thinking, come on, get with the times. If you were to put on paper what I was doing and who I was and what kind of mentality and attitude I had and say, would this person ever become religious, I would score 0 on whatever test we would come up with. But if you look at somebody and say, no way, there's no way, you say those words, you're making a huge mistake. A huge mistake, because I would have been that person that people probably said no way to lots of times if it weren't for the one person that said, maybe, maybe, maybe.
I was born in Vilna. I finished university there and lived in Moscow. I was already a child of the 6 Days War, so-called. After the 6 Days War, all the Jews in the Soviet Union, everywhere, were very enthusiastic about what nobody knew exactly, but general Jewish enthusiasm. On the other hand, it was a dictatorial, tyrannic country, with the Communist Party and with Brezhnev as the chief. So your enthusiasm has to be somehow expressed. We expressed it with our desire to go to Israel, didn't know anything about Judaism, and I started to learn Hebrew in 71, 72, and then I understood that I have to read something of the original sources. These sources were Tanakh and Torah. After reading the Sefer Dvarim, I understood that this is the way of life that I want to live. It took me 5 years from the beginning till I understood that I can start to teach others. I was the first in Kirov among people up to 40, 50 years old. And I was called so-called Moscow Rabbi by all the refuseniks, all the Jewish people who wanted to know something. Because on every holiday I made a speech there in the woods outside of Moscow. Remember, nobody allowed us to get a room, to get an apartment or anything. Everything had to be clandestine, secret. So we went out of Moscow into woods, and I started to teach them and invented methods how to teach. Some elderly Jew told me that KGB were interested. What is the future of young people studying Judaism? And some elderly people, maybe sincerely, said no future, nobody will keep kashrus, nobody will keep Shabbos. So some crazy people know. So the KGB thought that they had no threat. And this, they allowed me to work for 3 years. And after these 3 years, they understood that they made a mistake. Because when I left Moscow, there were about 300 religious people left behind. About 100 women were going to mikveh, and 0 were going when I started. So this was like from 0 to 300, it's something. Many times I cannot sleep at night when I think what is the small percentage of observant Jews are in the world. And how it could be not 20% in Israel or maybe 10% in America, but it could be 70%, 60% if it would work. If you take all us, thousands upon thousands of Jews who are intellectuals, who have Jewish knowledge, and go out to reach out our brothers. And what is the difference between me and another Jew? No difference. We are children of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Abraham, he didn't have his son, he didn't have children, but he prayed for another person, Avimelech. And because he prayed for another person, he cared about him, he was given his son Yitzchak a year later. So when we care about one person, forget what thousands, next door, you will be answered to your needs, to your personal needs, you will be answered. It's a super egoistic and nevertheless excellent approach. Care about somebody else, you will be cared by the Almighty. And He has resources, by the way.
How you doing? What's your first name?
Hanania.
Where are you from?
New York.
Where in New York?
Brooklyn.
Where in Brooklyn?
Borough Park.
Borough Park. Where's that?
It's Yerushalayim of America.
And what are you doing here?
Learning in Mir Yeshiva.
How long are you
here? 6 years.
6 years. Kiruv Rechoikim, is that something important, do you think?
Very important.
Why is that?
The main part of Yiddishkeit is to feel, to feel for each other. And just because we had the chance of being brought up from, we should spread our light. We shouldn't be selfish.
Rav Moshe Feinstein Zechariah the Bracha, who said that a person has to give a tithe of his time, meiser of his time, to Kiruv. I would tell a person, you have a responsibility to do something. To sit and do nothing, you cannot do. Now, you have other responsibilities and you're not a trained professional. 1 10-minute gesture a week. Call someone, write an email, speak to somebody online at the bank. Hello, who are you? 1 10-minute gesture a week. But be mischayev. You're not making Kiddush Friday night until you know that you made that gesture.
If you're not interested in doing outreach for the sake of helping others, do it anyway for your own sake, just to see how it feels when you've changed someone's life.
The most Hasidic guy in Williamsburg, if he could just open up, and think about, the next time he's in Manhattan, he's conducting business with his, I don't know who it is, the guy who is his tailor, and he sees that he's Jewish. If he can have him, invite him for Shabbat, he will come. If he's persistent enough, it pays off. There's probably the greatest payoff, because you've affected someone's life and you've shown him that he can develop himself into a better person.
We were standing at the door and he just said, "Would you read a book if I gave it to you?" And I said, "Sure." I mean, it was not a big deal. And I think that one gesture changed my whole life radically.
If you can show them in a not threatening way, right, that you're on their side, you want to help them, and because secular Jews are really interested in Torah, we just don't know it. The problem is that the religious Jews think the secular aren't interested, and the secular Jews think the religious aren't interested in them. That's the problem. There's a gap over here, right? If we can just bridge that gap a little bit, then we can change the world.
Anyone who really understands what Kiruv is about realizes that they are doing God's work. They are becoming God's emissary, that His hand, so to speak, in this world to accomplish the essence of what God wants accomplished in this world. There's nothing more profound than that.
I remember my brother said, he goes, it's relevant. He goes, it's got something to do with your life right now. And then it's little by little by little, a Shabbos, a lecture, a shir, a shmooze, this, a tape. And before you know it, 10 minutes before Shabbos, you're ripping toilet paper.
I was really a crazy guy growing up. I was really nuts in the sports and the parties and everything. People basically thought I'd be dead or in jail. I was throwing huge parties in the home I grew up in. We had 2 in the morning on a weekly basis. There'd be 40 police cars, squad cars outside the house, 2 helicopters hovering over our backyard, yelling disperse to the crowds of people there. I mean, I was majorly involved in life and experiential life. And surfing and mountain biking, camping and these parties. My family, my parents gave us, there were 2 major things. Lots of love no rules. And so we really had no rules growing up. And they never made any pretense of what was wrong or right. They just said, you go check it out for yourselves. So I'm one of 4 brothers, and we just went and tried everything. And we really did. It's kind of like the Yisro story. Surfed 6 to 8 hours a day for 12 years. Internationally, surfed some of the biggest waves in the world, and I was in top shape. And if I wasn't surfing, I was hardcore off-road mountain biking, and that was my main thing. So one stage was just California bliss of partying and surfing and sports, and the other stage was I started getting a little disenchanted with the whole thing. I kind of got saturated with all the surf sessions. I was asking questions about the nature of things, the nature of existence. Like, is there any meaning in this world? And I asked and asked and asked, and in all my travels, I met every kind of person. I think the only person I didn't meet was an Orthodox Jew. I'd be surfing in a jungle in Indonesia with a couple guys, and one of them's a born-again Christian who's like, he's got a Jew to work on while we're in the jungle together. But they always boiled down to like faith. Everything was like, all you got to do is believe. And I wasn't interested in that. I needed my mind appealed to, and no one was really appealing to my mind. I wound up traveling in Europe. I play music professionally. So I played in 17 countries in Europe, and somewhere along the line in that trip to Europe, I became an atheist. Because I can't see God, I'm not going to believe in Him. I'm certainly not going to live my life as if there is one. So I became a kind of a humanistic, lover of mankind. The only thing I knew that was real was love. It was around that point that my father's business that year, a year before, went down the tubes. Yeah. So for the first time in my life, I needed money to go somewhere. I used to just call my dad and say, send your driver with the surfboards and the bathing suits. I grew up, he had a very successful business, so we had, we really had everything. In fact, Dustin Hoffman lives in the home that I grew up in. So my brother calls me in Santa Barbara and says, how would you like a free ticket to Europe? I said, that's exactly what I need. I'm finishing school in a week, I want to leave. And he says, well, I got you a free ticket to Europe. I said, what's the catch? He says, you just got to be in Jerusalem for 6 weeks. After the 6 weeks, you can fly to Europe. So I agreed. I packed my surfboards, gave them to my parents, said, send these to Europe, and flying off to Israel. So I came to Israel, and I was with a guitar on my back, tie-dye, colorful shirt, Guatemalan clothes, long hair, frizzy hair, and I kind of had a feeling, I knew I was coming to this religious institution, and I had been street philosophizing my whole life, so I kind of thought like I was going to take all these guys and free them from their yeshiva experience and bring them all home to their families. Judaism would have been folklore and fairy tales. So I got here, and I was already starting up with guys here and talking to them about things, and philosophizing with the yeshiva boys. And they'd ask me questions like, if everyone's right, then I suppose you think Hitler's right, or something like that. I said, well, no, Hitler wasn't right. Said, well, how do you know Hitler's not right? And if it's all relative, maybe that's okay. Maybe murder's okay. Well, I said murder's not okay. Well, how do you know murder's not okay? And, all kinds of little traps like that. And the amazing thing is that all the questions I had since I was 11 years old till I was 23, this is now 23, it's a 12-year span. During all those years and all my questions, they were finally getting answered. I was slowly starting to get a feeling like, well, I better listen up a little more, because it could be I don't have the patent on reality. And, I was being humbled in these conversations. What happened on the 7th, 8th, and 9th days was the Discovery Seminar. It was an incredible breakthrough for me. I realized at that point that this is real, that it is true. There is a God, and that He's not only God, but He's the God of Mount Sinai. And at that point I was observant from that moment on, I've been observant ever since. I called my parents. I said, please don't send the surfboards. Don't send them to Europe, because I'm not going to Europe. And they said, why not? I said, this is the last stop. You know, this is it. I'm here. And they showed up in Israel. They came to get me out of yeshiva. And they said, you're coming home with us. I said, okay. I said, really? You'll come home? And they said, I said, yeah, but, you know, how long can you be here? They said, well, we could be here 2 weeks. I said, okay, have Shabbos. Come meet the Rosh Yeshiva, do discovery, you know, experience what I'm doing here. So at the end of the 2 weeks, they said, you just stay right here. I cut my hair right before they arrived, you know, so they were like, well, someone got them to cut his hair, you know. So my parents were pretty excited to see that things were going to work out for me. But by the time they got to LA, I had already arranged a teacher to come teach them every Friday the Parsha. They wound up coming to Israel to learn Hebrew, they said, but they wound up learning full-time in yeshiva. And they became observant at that point. They wound up living here for 6 months in the old city and learning Torah here. They wound up moving into a house in the Pacific Palisades, Malibu area, and they wound up building a shul with a few other families to make the first, you know, observant, you know, halachic shul in that area on the beach there where they live now. And my brother who sent me, I started sending home these giant, this was before email or anything, I was sending home 25-page letters to him on the veracity of the Mount Sinai experience and what are you doing with your life, and he became observant at that point. And then my other older brother, you know what I said to him? I said to him that, you know why so many people join cults? You know, or people join cults, but why people wind up really staying in the cults? I said, it's because their loved ones don't get them out. Like, what have you done to get me out of here? Because he was really upset. He thought I would definitely join a cult. You know, he was a big businessman with a matching phone, BMW, and suit, you know, in LA, running a business. And, you know, I said to him, you're not getting me out of here. I'm already in, you know, I've lost my objectivity. Like, get me out of here. And so he said, well, what do I got to do? I said, why don't you take the discovery seminar and argue it out with them. If you can somehow beat them in their arguments, you know, tell me about it and we'll get out of here together. So he did the program, and after the program he comes up to me and he says, I need you to follow me around this Shabbos. I said, why? He says, I want to keep one Shabbos in my life. Okay, I followed him around all Shabbos, and literally everything he did I told him he could do, couldn't do. And he kept his Shabbos and he went off and did his own thing. Only later to become, you know, fully observant, and he wound up dropping his business, became a rabbi. When someone becomes observant, there's a time that many yeshiva guys go through, like the blues. What happened basically is I started getting really depressed, and I got to the point where I was just like really in bad shape. And they had me shipped off to every kind of counselor, every rabbi. I mean, everyone tried to help me. So at one point, I was dancing in Toldos Aharon, Simchas Beis Shueva. And I'm dancing around with all the Chassidim. And one of my friends says to me, meet me in Karlin. So I said, where's Karlin? He says, go down Mea Shearim and turn right. So I danced a little more, and then I went down Mea Shearim, and I was feeling a little lost. You hear music everywhere. So I just asked someone, do you know where Karlin is? He said, yeah, it's right up these stairs. Now that was Pinsk Karlin. It was a different Karlin than Karlin Stolen. So I go up the stairs to Pinsk Karlin, open the door, and these Hasidim see me, and they're just like, a Baal Teshuvah, hey! They grab me in the middle of the circle, and I know how to dance, you know, because from my background, I can dance. So I am dancing with these Hasidim till like 3 in the morning. I mean, we just kept going and going. I'm in the center circle, dancing, and they were so warm to me. And one of them spoke a little bit of English, and he said, I want you to come for Shabbos. I first met him in shul for the davening, and they're screaming at the top of their lungs, and they're jumping up and down, and they're just like, they are completely going crazy in their davening. And when I got to his house, it was also like a mad scene, and there was dancing going on and all kinds of carrying on. And at that point, I realized I was home. They dunked me in the mikveh the next day, you know, on the way to shul. Like, I woke up, they had me sleep over. I'm like, no one ever has me sleep over. And, you know, I love the water. I'm a surfer, you know, like, you put me in the water. So I was like, I was in heaven, you know, I'm in the mikveh, I'm dancing, I'm screaming. I get into shul, and I'm screaming out in English. You know, I only knew how to pray in English at the time. You know, and all of a sudden they get quiet at the end of the paragraph, and I'm like, and praise the Lord, you know, or whatever the art scroll sitter said, and everyone's like looking at me like, what is that? You know, I've got a whole, like, circle of Yerushalmi little kids just like staring at me the whole time. I started going there every week. That was it. And all of a sudden, depression lifted, and I found myself at that point in Judaism. The greatest part of my week is putting on my shtreimel and putting on my vekatcher. It's like, for me, it's the crown. For me, that's the crown of my life. It's probably one of the biggest geschmacks I have, besides making siyums when I finish a tractate in Talmud, because that's like being an experiential Jew. That means the learning part doesn't come as naturally to me. So I would say it's just under having a siyum is putting on my shtreimel every week. Every time I look in the mirror and I see myself in the shtreimel, you know, I'll just catch myself and I'll be like, wow. My whole life flashes before my eyes. And I realize what an incredible gift this life has been, and that Hashem's brought me here to have this level of meaning in my life, connection to Hashem and a purpose. And it's amazing. You know, when a secular person looks at an Orthodox Jew with his hat, or his beard, or his tzitzis, or whatever, you know, they feel somehow inferior in front of you. When you just say hello, if you just give them just a tiny bit of love, just give them a tiny bit of smile, wink, you know, a little twinkle in your eye when you see them, you know, it just raises them up and they feel Jewish. The truth is the secular guy just wants a hug, you know, he just wants a handshake, he wants a smile, he wants a hello, you know, something like that. That's all he's looking for, and that makes all the difference. It's unbelievable. I have seen people become Baal Tshuva because someone said shalom to him. And the guy, he's Baal Tshuva, his grandchildren are going to be observant Jews because some chassid or some yeshiva guy, he just said hello. And that was all he needed to see. And then the next thing was the next hashgacha pratis in his life. The next thing that happened was someone said, hey, would you like to come to a class? And his heart was already warmed. He felt legitimized as a Jew. And he says, yeah, of course I want to come to a class. You know, I'm shaykh to Torah study. You know, of course. You know, that's half the battle. It's just being nice to the person. It's amazing what a difference it makes to be nice to a secular guy.
Give a person a book, give a person a tape, bring people to classes. In every major city in North America, there's kiruv organizations where you could bring somebody to a class. You know, you don't have to do all the teaching or bring them to a seminar. Websites, all the Jewish organizations have websites that are educational, entertaining, and they're powerful. And many people get turned on to Yiddishkeit. That's very non-threatening. Giving a person a website, sending them an article from a website, a link to where they can go to, it makes a difference in so many people's lives. You know, I go back to Rabbi Avi Geller, who was the rabbi who met me on the bus. Avi, you know, I owe you my life. Oh, come on, I just met you on a bus. I said, no, you did it, man, you did it. That's it, look at my children, K'nai Nahara. You know, I just made a siyum with my 11-year-old son, Mishnayos, Maseches Shabbos. Avi Geller, that's his schus. He gets all that. You know, he made the difference.
You just have to have the desire to reach out. You're always meeting people, invite a non-from person for a Shabbos, or there's all kinds of organizations that arrange Shabboses, or have a chavrus on the telephone, or learn with somebody once a week, talk to someone, and so much can be accomplished. You have no idea how much can be accomplished for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Solomon built the temple in a special prayer. Larry. I remember when he was still Larry. That's it.
Simple Wasserman, you know, he had me for Shabbos. You know, that's it, changed my life. What happened at his Shabbos table was absolutely magic. And I felt the Kedusha. And we were talking, and he was giving over Divrei Torah. And I was so moved by that experience that I decided right there at the Shabbos table, I said, if this man, who's so wise and so special, and his Rebbetzin, who's so kind and giving, if they keep Shabbos, it's got to be the right thing. So I decided right there, I'm going to be Shomer Shabbos. I'm going to keep Shabbos. Whatever it means, I'm going to keep Shabbos. And in fact, I've kept Shabbos ever since then.
I was at a lecture, and the rabbi walked over to me and said, would you like to come over for a Shabbos? Would you like to, you know, and for whatever reason, I said, sure, why not? The farthest thing in my mind was becoming Orthodox or putting a yarmulke on or you know, learning Torah. I didn't even know what Torah was. I didn't even, it was, oh, great, some nice, you know, home-cooked meal. Yeah, which works wonders.
The reason he's coming to your house is because he wants to see Shabbos. He wants to see a frum family. He's visiting something which he's been told is part of his background, but is totally foreign to him. He's not coming to make fun. He's not coming to attack. He's coming to learn. He's coming to experience. Sit down with your children and say, what can we do for them? As young as 5, what can you do for them? The 5-year-old will say, I'll show him where benching is in the bencher. Or I'll show him how to wash his hands. Get everybody involved. They're coming to us to find out what we have. That shows that what we have is important, what we have is precious. They want to find out about us.
I started to go to his house for Shabbos, and I saw something I never saw before when I went to his house. I saw how he talked to his kid, and how he dealt with his wife and his family. And this was a guy who was like me. He told me his background. He went to college. He pulled out a Gemara, and he started learning. I'm like, I never saw anything like this before. And I was thinking to myself, hey, I went to Hebrew school. I graduated. I never saw anything like this before.
Unless you're exposed to a whole other reality, you don't recognize that you're in an illusion. It's like living in a dream. It's hard to imagine the world of a secular person. You can look at it, but just the same way that I was a secular person looking at the frum world, I was looking but I wasn't seeing. I was seeing people walking on a Saturday. I wasn't seeing the beauty of Shabbos.
Once I was very depressed. I was in a very bad mood, and I was walking at the kotel, and I was crying, and I said, what am I doing with my life, and what's going to happen? And I happened to see him walk down. He was learning at the time as a bacher. I happened to see him pass by, and when I saw Reb Yitz, I said, my life is worthwhile. I did at least something good in my life.
I was born in Manhattan, but for most of my young life I grew up in Tenafly, New Jersey. I was not always this way. I used to be, I would categorize myself as more of a, sort of a beach bum. I spent a lot of time at the beach. I also eventually went down to Miami to actually to go to law school, but I chose that location because I thought it'd be a nice beach town area for me to spend a few years. At a certain point when I was in Miami, I was actually dating a Cuban woman. She was not Jewish. And it was going on for quite a while, and at a certain point I realized if I were to marry this woman, my children wouldn't be Jewish. I mean, Baruch Hashem, I knew that much. So I started to search for some rabbis to speak to get a little bit of advice on that topic. Most people who I spoke to just said, you can't marry her because she's not Jewish. It was pretty much the standard line without giving me any kind of insight that I was looking for. And finally, one rabbi said to me, listen, you might want to marry her, you might not want to marry her. He said, why don't you experience Judaism, and then you'll have your answer. So I decided to take him up on that, and I went out to find a way to learn a little bit about Judaism. I knew on Miami Beach there was a yeshiva, Rabbi Yochanan Zweig's yeshiva was there, and I walked in and I told them that I needed to learn a little bit about Judaism, and so they asked me if I was Jewish, although I did put on a yarmulke for that situation to be respectful, but they still, I guess I didn't have the look. And I told them I was Jewish, and they invited me, and they said, we have a beginner's Chumash class every morning at 7 a.m. So I saw them the next day. The impact was dramatic the minute I walked in. I never saw davening that was meaningful before, where people really believed in what they were doing. I was so impressed that people were davening and they were closing their eyes and they were really getting into it, and that had a very big impact on me, just seeing how real it was to them. There are different types of seekers, I guess. I was looking for emes. I wanted to see if there was a real reason that I needed to carry on in this tradition. I started learning that the world doesn't revolve around me anymore. Even though in some level we're supposed to think that way, I started thinking in much more humble terms. After listening to the Rebbeim there, I realized that my decisions do matter. I was missing something, even though originally I wasn't looking for anything other than how to handle the situation with the girl. I told her that I wanted my children to be Jewish, and I didn't think that I could give her any kind of, it wouldn't be fair to continue being with her because I couldn't give her what she was looking for. She needed to carry on with her life and find herself a husband.
Well, it's a pretty big deal. I mean, what was that like? And it must have been very difficult.
Yeah, it was very difficult because she was, quote unquote, a good person. But I just started thinking, maybe I have a tradition going back possibly a few thousand years, and my grandparents coming over here, getting by the Holocaust, and instilling some sort of Jewish identity into me. I didn't want to be the one to break that chain. I went to Rabbi Zweig's home for a Shabbos meal, and his son was, I believe, 13 years old, and I noticed they were very polite. They walked us out to, walked us to the front door, and they'd walk you right down the path to the sidewalk, and his 13-year-old son walked right down to the sidewalk with me, and then he started walking down the sidewalk with me and just talking to me about life, and I thought he was a very intelligent 13-year-old kid. And then he kept walking and walking, and a mile later I was at my front door, and he shook my hand and said good Shabbos and walked home. And to see a 13-year-old boy to talk to an adult and walk him, to talk to a young adult and walk him home and talk about life, it just had a very big impact on me. I didn't grow up with 13-year-olds like that. What is this religion about? I don't know. I'm ignorant. I don't know. I don't learn Gemara. But I see a rabbi's son who's 13 years old walking me a mile home to my apartment, talking to me in a very intelligent way, talking in a very mature way. So it's not always about the technical aspects of learning. It's, sometimes it's just seeing how a frum Jew lives has a huge impact on a person. And that certainly did. Since I started growing in a spiritual way in my Torah observance, everything has changed. I have a wonderful wife and just wonderful children, a wonderful house and a wonderful community, and I realized that these are all gifts that have been given to me because I am I'm growing in Torah. And I had none of those things previously, none of them. Had I not been able to find an environment that, a yeshiva or a rabbi or someone who could give me the answers that I was looking for, and I do believe I was looking for them, but if I weren't able to find that, yeah, I might have been a statistic. I was concerned about my kids being Jewish, but I had no idea how concerned I should have been. My son, who's 4.5, he's in school and he comes home, he knows the story of Pesach, he knows the story of Purim, he comes home singing songs, he asks me certain questions that I actually can't answer. Sometimes it actually almost makes me want to cry when I see that, and what I could have potentially passed up, it just would have been a tragedy that I didn't even know about. One day my son got in the car, we picked him up from school, and he actually got in the car unsolicited and he said to me, "Tati, Torah is yummy." And just to hear that, it was a beautiful thing.
What are you going to say? You get upstairs, you know, Admei Vesrim, you get upstairs and Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to say, like, what did you do? And you'll be like, well, I didn't know the answer to their question. And God says, they didn't have questions. They just wanted a little love. They wanted you to share your life with them. That's all they wanted.
Be part of it, even b'miktzas, even b'miyut. Miyut hanikar. Make it part of your consciousness and part of your commitment that you too are going to participate, even 10 minutes a week.
He'll thank you all his life, and they do it. They thank you all their lives.
If my coworker, if he had not talked to me, if he had not invited me to the seminar, my life would probably be radically different right now. I probably wouldn't be observing anything much more than the high holidays, if that.
All someone did with me is they tried. Wasn't persuasive, wasn't exciting, but they tried. They said, come down to a class. And I went. And then Judaism sells itself. You don't have a hard product to sell, but you have to approach the person.
There's something like 13 million Jews in the world today. So, and there's maybe, give or take, 1 million Jews that keep Shabbat. So if each Jew went out and invited 12 people into their home, you know, one person a month, effectively all the Jewish people would have a chance to experience a true Shabbat. And that's all it takes.
You see somebody, they got a ponytail. You see somebody, they're not dressed Shabbos-dik on a Shabbos. So what? You see a kid that obviously you see he's not on the derech. So what? It's not for us to judge him. It's for us to embrace him. I mean, you know, there's so few of us. Stick together.
This fellow was walking up the beach, and he looked and he saw someone doing something, he didn't know what. As he got closer, he saw that the fellow was picking up starfish and throwing them in the sea. So he came up to him and he says, what are you doing? He says, well, you see, it's low tide now, and if I don't get these starfish back into the water, they're going to dry up and die. So the fellow looked, but there are thousands of starfish here. Do you really think you make a big difference over here? With that, the fellow reached down, picked up another starfish, tossed it in the sea. He said, it made a big difference for that one. And I'm one of those starfish.
This is such a golden opportunity to really change a life, to really bring truth to where there's just fiction. And that's a gift, to be able to do that. And so while you're studying and you're raising your own children and you're supporting your family and you may be doing wonderful things, to take somebody who's really bare, they're just like new to the world, and to share with them even something small, that's a chance to change the world.
אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם, השיבנו השם, אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם. השיבנו השם אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם, השיבנו השם אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם.